And welcome back, peeps, to the wonderful, glorious episode of the World of Ted, where we explore how single Latter-day Saints can learn, live, and love truly enjoyable dating. I found a series of articles here that were put out about singles from Exponent. Now, those of you who are familiar with that publication will know that Exponent doesn't, let's just say it this way. Exponent hasn't always stand firmly in support of the brethren. So I'm going to, go through the articles that I get from this source with a very heavy grain of salt, because I am in 100% support of the brethren. That said, I think there's some interesting perspectives, at least in this first article of the series. I'm not so sure about the others. I don't remember reading those, but I kind of glanced over this first one that we're going to look at. So let me get this started here, and then we can dive right in to the wonderful, amazing, whatever it is that we do, right? All right, so here we go. We're here at Exponent. Articles entitled Dear Single Members, and as you can see, it's from a series of articles written about being single in the church. It says here by guest post, but, at the end of the article, it's going to say, it's going to be signed Suzanne or Suzette, something like that. So I don't know why, we shouldn't just put her name up here and why it appears as guest post, but okay. Published in 2016, updated just last year in 2020. So keep those dates in mind. I think those dates are going to be important as we go through the article here. So let's dive in here. Let's see what we got here. Dear single members, as I put together this series on singles, a theme has emerged. This theme has run through all articles and all experiences. It is the same theme I hear in conversation with single friends: condescension. Single members feel a sense of pity, shunning, and lower status in the church. Leaders and married members may or may not feel disregard for or disappointment in their single brothers and sisters, but they do communicate the message. The feeling of being weak, bad, or less than is not new for any of us. The very beginning, when Satan told Adam and Eve they were naked, the great deceiver whispers that we are naked, wrong, unlovable. Single members receive this message in double portion from a church that values family and sealed couples above all else. And see, already here, I'm already going to disagree with you, because I'm not disagreeing with your experience of condescension. I'm not going to say that you're not experiencing what you say you are experiencing. What I am going to say is, where I disagree is where you say that the church values family and sealed couples above all else. I disagree with you there. It's not the church that is putting forward these values that you're struggling with. It's the culture of the church membership. It's not the church, it's the culture. That's very important to distinguish between the two. Okay, because see, the church is that body of doctrines and ordinances that relate to our individual spiritual lives. But the culture is sort of the rules for interacting with one another and for determining, who belongs in the group and who doesn't belong in the group. So really, when you're talking about this condescension, you're really referencing a sense of belonging. And that doesn't come from the doctrines and ordinances that we use to practice the Latter-day Saint lifestyle. It comes from the culture of interacting with each other and for looking at the rules of who belongs and who doesn't. The mark of belonging in traditional Latter-day Saint culture is being married with kids. That, more than anything, is what I think you're getting at here. So it's not the church that values family and sealed couples above all else. It is the culture. So I just look at this stuff and I just got to be careful maybe just being a little more sensitive to this because of the source. But like I said at the very beginning, I'm 100% behind the brethren. So let's see what else we got here. Single friend of my, I think that's a typo. A single friend of mine, I think it should read, often tells the entertaining story of how the single members of her family ruled the day one year at Thanksgiving. My friend is the middle child of a large LDS family. One year, in her young adulthood, the siblings were fairly evenly split, married and single. The single siblings were unceremoniously sent to eat dinner in an adjoining room at the kids' table. Embracing their lot, they began to tell stories and laugh and sing and enjoy themselves over dinner. See, this has nothing to do. The experience you're describing here has nothing to do with the doctrines and the ordinances that comprise the church. It has everything to do with the culture, how it is that we're interacting with the other and deciding who belongs and who doesn't. Let's see. Embracing their lot, they began to tell stories and laugh and sing and enjoy themselves over dinner. Hey, that's great. That's a great attitude to have in that situation. Because of their merriment, two married siblings came into the room in hopes of joining in the fun. At this intrusion from the married siblings who had annexed them in the first place, my friend and her single siblings yelled, "Married people, get out. This is the single room." Then began to chant, "Singles rule, singles rule." Okay, two wrongs do not make a right, peeps. We can't rightfully claim that our exclusions from the general body of the church are justified if we are practicing the same things. Because if we're doing the same things that we're complaining about, we don't have any moral high ground. We don't have any justification for complaining about our situation, because we're no better than the people we're complaining about. The story always amuses me. Well, I certainly would not want to throw all the married members out of the... Who's talking about throwing anyone out of the church? I do appreciate the way this group of single members claimed their space and validated themselves. Educating the majority population, the married members, about single members will do great good in opening spaces to integrate us, but I also believe that much of the integration work needs to come from the single side. Okay, well, there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, you notice that the article was first published in 2016, but the article was also updated in 2020. Remember I told you, remember those dates? Those dates would come in handy. Well, guess what? I mean, we learned just in April 2021 General Conference that singles are the majority membership of the church. And this isn't something new. This has actually been in place for some time. So, first, I don't think you're really up to date about the demographic. I think the perspective that you're sharing that's driving this article is coming from a place that is not inclusive of what's going on with the church globally. So let's just understand, and that's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but I think we should be mindful of the limitations of your observations. Second, integration work needs to come from the single side also. Yeah, but again, it's not about the church, it's about the culture. And the culture is going to change when everyone participates in a new culture together. So, yeah. But okay, let's just go on and see what more we got here. One way we can change the attitudes about single members is to change attitudes we hold about ourselves. I agree. Start at home. Start with yourself. As a never married, always active LDS member, I am no stranger to inward attitudes about my singleness, reinforced by the condescending remarks and attitudes of others. When I heard Christine Haglund speak about singles over a year ago, I began to work on changing that story for myself. Christine says, we as singles can stop being limited by false theories about ourselves. Clean from every corner of your psyche the cobwebs of not enough, broken, unworthy, defective, and incomplete. Do the work it takes to sell yourself a different story and really believe it. Now, I wholeheartedly believe in that. I couldn't agree more with that. That is absolutely true. A lot of the reality that we have, not just as singles, but as human beings, we create with the way that we think. So if you want a new reality, change the way you think. I go into the connections between your thinking and your reality. And there was a book that I wrote, I can't remember when it was, like, 2 or 3 years ago, it seems now, maybe earlier, where I talk about habits. And I talk about how we all have habits of thinking and how those habits of thinking translate into the habit of the reality that we have. And so, you can check that out. There's the first fireside presentation that I made. You can watch it for free up there at the Join the Journey Radio YouTube channel. That talks about it there as well. But yeah, I'm totally on board with this. The way you think about yourself, the way you identify yourself, that's going to lead to actions that, and it's going to lead to an energy that you broadcast to other people. So the way you act to other people, the way that the energy that you broadcast out to other people, that's going to clue them in on what you think of yourself and how you should be treated. And most people are just going to respond to that. So yeah, other people do choose that, and that choice is outside your control, but it's not outside your influence. You influence a choice other people make. And oftentimes people will just follow along with the influence that you're giving them. So when you have this idea inside your head that you're not good enough, that's how people are going to treat you most of the time. How am I doing the work to believe a new story? In a variety of ways, as I best think suits my situation and resources. Deeper discussions with family and friends, self-reflection, therapy, more meaningful prayer and worship, meditation, exercise, and continually practicing the rejection of false or harmful messages. I think this woman is going overboard with what she's doing here. I don't think you necessarily need all of this. Now, don't get me wrong, therapy can be helpful, but the vast majority of singles do not need therapy. We just need to understand the way that we're designed to operate, and then we need to then leverage that knowledge to start operating in a more effective way, so we live life more effectively. That's what most of us need. And it really all comes down to I'm looking at all these different things she's got here, but what it really comes down to is your self-talk. 95% of your emotions come from your self-talk. Self-talk is basically the group of messages that you give to yourself. So when something happens and you're saying something to yourself in your head, that's self-talk. And those are the messages that you can control. You choose what your self-talk is, because we all have habits of self-talk. So, when you tell yourself negative things, and tell yourself negative things long enough, you're going to believe them. And the way to get out of that is just start telling yourself positive things. And you tell yourself positive things long enough, and you'll believe in positive things. And that's really what it is. Now, deeper discussions with family and friends, and self-reflection and meditation and exercise, all these things she's mentioning here, those can be helpful, but they don't get to the core of the matter. If you want to get to the core, the root of the matter, you've got to look at your self-talk. That controls 95% of how you feel inside. So you want to feel better about yourself in your life? Why don't you start with what's controlling 95% of that? Start with your self-talk and look at your habits of self-talk. Replace the less effective habits with more effective ones, and you'll find that more effective self-talk leads to more effective thinking. More effective thinking leads to more effective actions. More effective actions lead to more effective results. More effective results lead to more effective reality. It's really no more complicated than that. Once we have a new story, we can tell the story to our church leaders and friends through our service, our callings, our comments, and our conversations. We can reach out to mature, age-appropriate service projects. But what the holy Hebrew hay is that? Mature, age-appropriate service? I'd love to know where you live, because I'm just like, I have no idea what is influencing you to term service projects and describe it with these adjectives: mature, age-appropriate. You got me wondering. We can show up toward family activities and act like we belong. No. You don't act like you belong. You either do or you don't. You don't act like you belong. You either behave like you belong or you behave like you don't belong. You're not putting on a show. If you're putting on a show, that means you don't really believe that you belong. We can receive invitations with grace and extend invite. I think that's supposed to be extend invitations to our married friends as we would our single friends. We can push back thoughtfully in conversations when single members are spoken of in critical or judgmental ways, and we can model the ways we would like to be treated. Okay, I can see these as positive outlets. Okay, but again, I think we need to talk more about the actual culture. I think we need to be more overt about it, quite frankly. It's like all of these sorts of things are really ways of playing defense. And, when you're out on the field and all you ever do is play defense, how do you expect to win the game? How do you expect to score points if all you do is play defense? You want to win the game, you got to go on offense. You got to play offense. And I think in this context, playing offense means that we be more overt about saying, look, the culture, it has a problem with it. We need to get away from the family center of the culture, and we need to replace that with a Christ center and start, putting out the mark of belonging on, are you making and keeping as many covenants with God as you can? That needs to be the marker of belonging. And we need to start being more open and overt about that conversation and pushing that conversation out. Then I think we'll start to make some gain and start winning the game, as it were, as we score points. Of course, some of the problems in telling a new story come directly from curriculum, where it is suggested that single members will not receive a fullness of glory or are doomed to eternal servitude as administering angels. We then comment in class or speak from the pulpit. We can use inclusive language and expanded views. We can speak with confidence that we too share in God's grace and we too will inherit as God's children. Well, again, see, this goes back to the cultural problem that I was talking about before. The author here does not seem to be distinguishing between the church and the culture. So I'm not exactly sure where this person lives, but I'm guessing you live in a place where the vast majority of the population is LES. It really, because that's where people typically have problems distinguishing between the church, the covenant that we make, and the culture, the way that we interact and integrate that covenant in our daily lives. So, yeah, because here you're talking about, and first of all, you've got this perspective as though it's an all or nothing attitude. You've got this attitude that says, well, if it doesn't happen in this life, then you're going to be doomed forever. The prophet Joseph taught that there's so much that needs to be done after we pass through the veil before we receive an inheritance in the celestial kingdom. The path of perfection and eternal progression extends well beyond this life. This is just a very, very small portion that we have here in mortality of the total path. So, let's get some perspective here, okay? When you talk about the doctrine saying that, people who don't enter into that eternal covenant of marriage will not receive a fullness of glory and doomed to eternal servitude as administering angels. You're talking about people who have walked the vast majority portion of that eternal path of progression and don't have that marriage covenant there at the end. You're not talking about people who don't have it here in this life. So again, I agree with you that we need to start with ourselves and we need to get our thinking straight. And part of the thinking that we need to get straight is we need to get perspective and realize that we're on an eternal journey. And there's so much more to this, right, than just this life. When we comment in class or speak from the pulpit, we can use inclusive language. I agree we should use inclusive language. I agree we should use expanded views. I mean, how much more expansive can you get than looking at the entire eternal path of progression from the viewpoint of its entirety in eternity, rather than just this small, minuscule portion that we have here in this mortal life, in this fallen and imperfect world. I agree we should accentuate the positive, but let's get some perspective here. Another way to incorporate the single and marriage separation is to expand the image of family. It is natural, even ingrained, for Mormons to speak of family in terms of small, sealed units, parents and children, and that's how it should be. Singles can raise the consciousness of this habitual behavior. We could speak up and talk openly of our inclusion in all kinds of families. Our biological family, our ward family, our chosen clan is family, our human family, and most of all, God's family. I agree with that. I'm not particularly opposed to that. At the same time, I don't think we want to go redefining family to mean anything but hey, parents and children, that's what the family unit is. I think we need to be conscious of that. Now, we can speak of the term family in more broad and expansive ways. I don't have an issue with that. In fact, I'm all on board with that. But at the same time, I think when we're talking about doctrine, we need to keep the definition of family what it is: parents and children. Let's see. Single members are sometimes accused of living forever in Neverland, entertaining an endless string of games, parties, and trips. Well, I think this accusation is harsher than deserved. Actually, a lot of the people that make those accusations are just jealous that you get to do what they want to do but can't because they have obligations from being married and having a family. Well, I think this accusation is harsher than deserved. I do think there are ways in which we, as single members, can keep ourselves in a state of arrested development. If we can resolve some immature behaviors, I believe it will alleviate the constant infantilizing we receive from others. Things we can consider as we examine ourselves: unneeded drama in relationships, stunted familial bonds, youthful living arrangements, inappropriate help sought from bishops, when a therapist, an attorney, or a mentor would be better suited to the situation, underemployment, whining, exaggerated reactions to life's usual circumstances, and resisting service opportunities. Okay, again, I think there's some typos here, but overall, I agree with the general idea here. But I think that a lot of this that we're looking at here, where she talks about, we can keep ourselves in a state of arrested development, I think that comes into the nature of habit. We are creatures of habit. This is why you see, people that attending these mid-singles activities and mid-singles wards acting like they're still in high school because they haven't updated their habits. And really, what you're really talking about here is updating your habits. When you step back and look at things, see yourself more from an outsider's point of view. Develop a sense of self-awareness and just reflect and say, okay, do I have the habits that I should have? Do my habits need updating? Is there changes I need to make? And if so, what changes do I need to make? And how am I going to make those changes? So, just taking occasional moments to self-reflect and just kind of update your habits, I think is what we're really getting at here. Let's see. Reaching again into the Christine Playbook, I quote, "Simply by existing within the body of Christ, unmarried saints open space for a richer and deeper understanding of God and the nature of God's gifts to their children." I agree with that. We know from the scriptures that the gifts of God are many. As church members, we often rely on easy role definitions to guide our gifts and our service. Mother, father, spouse, leader. Single members have fewer roles to guide us. So we learn from inward searching about our gifts. We are forced, being barred from a multitude of callings. That's not true anymore. Okay, again, look at the dates. Okay, it originally came out in 2016. Things have been changing since 2016. Okay, I'm single. I've never been married, and yet I'm currently serving as stake executive secretary. So, these things are changing, right? To find original ways to use these gifts in service. Quote above, simply by existing in our unique way, we can be an example to others of finding individuality, embracing divine gifts, and reaching beyond comfort zones. This gets into something that I've talked about a lot on the Join Your Journey radio program, and that is a personal ministry. Singles need to look at the gifts, the talents they have, and figure out, okay, how can I use these to make the world a better place? How can I use these to help, lift others and to improve their lives, and then just devote yourself to whatever that cause is. And, having that personal ministry can help singles in so many ways to find greater fulfillment in life, to find more joy in our journey as singles. And also, I'm convinced that as more of us embrace a personal ministry, we can get out of these ineffective dating methods that just aren't yielding results for many of us. And we can put ourselves in a path to where we'll cross quality people who actually can offer us what we really need to have in a partner on the inside. And that's going to come through embracing a personal ministry. So, I'm largely in agreement with what's going on, with what's being said here, but at the same time, I got this sneaking suspicion that, the author here is setting us up for this dichotomy of, life as a single adult is just as good and should be just as accepted as life as a married man or woman. And I don't think we should go there. I really don't think we should go there. Singles are also in a unique position to both practice and teach patience and endurance to all members of the church. Our experience, both comfortable and not, has tutored us in these virtues. We can, in turn, be effective teachers. When we bring our experience to the body of Christ, we teach others in distinctive ways, and this binds us to the body and makes us an essential piece. Yes, and this is why Paul was said in the New Testament that, I think it was 1 Corinthians, where he talks about, the body of Christ. And he talks about, the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of thee. The hand cannot say to the foot, I have no need of thee. We all have something to offer that benefits the whole. And a lot of it's just added perspective. Married members of the church have perspective on things that I don't have, and I can benefit from that. Likewise, many of my married friends in the church can benefit from my perspective as a single adult. And sharing that perspective can help all of us to grow together. So I'm pretty much in line with this. Singles often live in the borderlands, the places where we can feel loneliest. And these places are exactly the places where we learn to be whole. I believe that single people know a lot about loneliness. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's a good thing, as there is wisdom to be found there. If you put in some time being lonely, the opposite of loneliness is wholeness, and that you have to be whole before you can belong. Okay. Singleness can be both lonely and holy. While anyone can be lonely, the single member cannot hide loneliness in the crowd or in the children. In lonely places, we reach out to God and come to know more intimately the love and peace and virtues of our heavenly parents. We are made whole by this close connection. And when we are connected to God, we model peaceful holiness, a stabilizing gift to our wards and our friendships. In Isaiah and the Doctrine and Covenants, there are injunctions that Zion must increase in beauty, and in holiness her borders must be enlarged. Yeah, I agree with a large portion of his sentiment, and yet, again, I just can't help but have this sneaking suspicion, like I'm being set up to have, this conclusion of the single life should be equivalently accepted to the married life, and I don't think we want to go there. I don't think we want to go there. I think we want to promote marriage. I think we want to encourage marriage. I don't think that we want to go to a place where we have been in the past, where people feel like they're not accepted for not being married. But see, that's the beauty of a Christ-centered culture. Because when your culture is centered on Christ, then the marker of belonging becomes, are you making and keeping all the covenants that you can make and keep? And so this includes everyone. So I, as a single adult, have not made all the same covenants that a married member has made, but we can each be judged by the standard of, are we making and keeping all the covenants that we can? We can all be included into that, as long as we're trying to keep all the covenants that we've made. My single friends, I dislike the sense of condescension that many of us feel crushed beneath. I hope the leaders and married members will grow in their empathy and understanding of our situation, but it may be slow and painful. I know we can aid the process of healthy integration by stepping outside this condescension and carving out our own place in a church where we do belong. How did I know that was coming? I want to claim this place. I hope you will join me. Well, Suzette, I'm not going to join you in claiming our own place. We don't need our own place. We have a place the place is the church. The church itself is the place where we belong, or we need to belong. It's not like there's a place for the marrieds and a place for the singles. And the best example of this, is the temple. In the temple, when you go through the ordinance of the endowment and you finally get to the celestial room, there's no special anteroom where the marrieds get to go and the singles don't. Everyone is in the place that represents being in the presence of God. That's symbolic, I think, of what we want to create in the church and in the culture of the church. That we want to develop this mindset where everyone fits, everyone belongs. There's a place for everyone in the church. It's not like, well, we're going to take this place here and we're going to call it the singles place. And you marrieds get this place over here. See, that kind of separation has caused us the problems that we've had traditionally. We've got to adopt a new way of thinking in which we all belong together to the same church, to the same place. So yeah, I do want to carve out, the church as a place where we all belong, whether we're single or married. I don't want to claim any piece of the church as a separate place for just the singles. I don't want that, because I think that's going to lead us down a really bad road. That's going to lead us more down the road we've already been going down. And we know that that's not a good road to go down, because we see the struggles of singles trying to fit in when they don't even have the marker of belonging. By definition, we're not married. So when the marker of belonging is being married with kids, by definition, we don't fit in. And yet we're trying to fit in. This is the problem. And we fix this problem by creating a culture that's centered on something that we can all belong to. And that's why I say, let's have a Christ-centered culture, because Christ can take all of us in. Christ can accept all of us, and all of us can accept him. So yeah, I'm not going to join you, Suzette. I agree with a large portion of what you're saying, but I mean, there are some details here that I think really need some clarification. So, yep, that's where I stand. And that's all we got for this episode of The World of Ted. If you want to carry on the conversation, please, look down below, leave a comment down below in the forum, and, we can continue our conversation there. Otherwise, I will see you next time for another episode of The World of Ted, where we will learn how Singularity Saints can learn, live, and love truly enjoyable dating. See you next time.